And so I'm going to invite Ginevra D'Agostino, that is the co-founder of Liminal, and she will talk about new models of practice for fragile territories.
Okay.
Yeah, we can see.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. So first of all, good afternoon. I'm very excited to be here today and hear everyone's presentation. And as Federica said, I will be presenting some of our work and some of our models at Liminal. I would like to start by saying that at its core, Liminal is a multidisciplinary team of young professionals. And what brings us together is the desire to work on those spatial issues of fragile territories and small municipalities that continue to present challenges for their communities into the future. The story of Liminal started when Nicolas, Carmelo, and I met at MIT and share common frustrations that ultimately transform into a drive to apply what we had learned to issues that matter to us. We were coming from backgrounds in architecture, urban design, and planning, and we spent a year brainstorming on how to meaningfully apply our experience to the benefit of struggling extra-metropolitan territories. And so if we look back at the 20th century, it is easily apparent how larger socioeconomic shifts and corresponding policies impacted the growth of cities, contributed to the depopulation of smaller centers, and led to the disinvestment of comprehensive transportation infrastructure. Our objective at Liminal is to use new models to propose a different future, where we ask ourselves if we could envision an Italy well connected by physical and digital infrastructure, where quality of life and professional opportunity and a sense of belonging are not mutually exclusive terms for the next generation. We began Liminal to promote a prosperous, equitable, and environmentally responsible future for the Italian territory, and we did so on the premise that this means reinforcing a model of polycentric development that builds upon the country's historic settlement condition. So in order to do this, part of our challenge is, of course, to balance our understanding of local and national realities. And we have learned that when we look at any one community, no matter how small, the web of stakeholders operates at a variety of scales. And although many of the issues that affect the spatial realities of these places can be worked on at the individual level, many require changes to the larger incentive systems that motivate them. So while we choose to remain centered around the lessons and opportunities offered by spatial disciplines, we also decided to do so in collaboration with many other sectors that more indirectly define how we treat and use space. So we think complex issues require creative solution and that we should build teams in order to achieve specific goals, not set goals based on the pre-existing limits of any one profession. But what is the structure that follows from this ambition and how does it operate? Liminal is a nonprofit structure that at its basic level supports its members in working on specific initiatives that are compatible with its mission. It is a means through which to place the talents and energies of individuals at the service of public benefit goals that impact the Italy of small communities. And Liminal is essentially run by a group of active shareholders that develops and maintains the structure for the organization's broader membership. Of course, this means that Liminal's members are what the organization is all about. They are the strength and principal asset of the organization, without which the structure is an empty container. As shareholders, we organize the goals and direction of the organization in relation to the issues that our spatial disciplines point us towards. But we then strive to build a membership that represents talented individuals in all those fields in one way or another that influence the shape of the built environment. So what do I mean by initiatives? The initiatives that Liminal engages fall into three groups: research, consultancy, and projects. Three of them are actually interrelated. The three of them are actually interrelated, where research is the first step through which we create information that can inform decision-making, through consultancy, we engage public and private sector stakeholders to contribute to a long-term perspective, and through projects, we participate in concrete initiatives that we believe can have a catalytic role for communities. So I will start with Sutera in Sicily inner areas, where we have been experimenting with ways to fill gaps of digital infrastructure that large corporations like Google don't get to. We have been developing a bottom-up toolkit for mapping those urban elements that the Google Street View card does not get to. By walking through narrow, stepped, or steep elements of the block pattern with a helmet-mounted 3D camera, we achieve two things. The first, we managed to map street networks that are otherwise opaque to basically all location-based web apps, which, as you can see in this map, represent an important segment of the urban fabric of small municipalities like Sutera. We then have the capacity of actually uploading both the street pattern and its 3D walkthrough content to digital platforms like Google Maps, creating the digital storefronts that local businesses and services providers cannot survive without today. And this attitude continues, we continue to pursue it in Abruzzo, where we are studying the interrelation between small communities across a historic rail line. So our research has led us to work with photogrammetric documentation, through which we have been digitizing the morphological qualities of historic towns along the rail. As we analyze the spatial constraints that affect the development potential of these places with a level of precision that would otherwise be impossible, we're looking into ways that these modeling tools can have a broader communication value. How can they help us analyze, but also understand, navigate, and narrate these places? These documentary tools have allowed us to better understand the reality of these places, but they're not the only means through which we are doing so. In the town of Aidone, we have been looking at the correlation between the well-known phenomena of the population decline in small centers and its spatial distribution across the city. Many of you will have heard the story of towns like Aidone doubling their built volume in the late 20th century as population decline continue, of people abandoning historic center in favor of modern amenities in peripheral developments. So we took solid waste tax records to verify this vacancy pattern and its current state. And by using this seemingly unrelated data set, we were able to spatialize housing occupancy efficiently and with a level of precision otherwise impossible. Although the research confirmed that there is vacancy in the historic center, we actually found a larger vacancy footprint in the periphery, something which we think can be very important and can have important repercussions as the conversations about selective demolition becomes necessary in many of these towns. And the link between this fine-grained knowledge of local condition and an understanding of the value they may represent beyond the regional level is something else we have had the opportunity to work on in Ciociaria. We've been working with a cooperative in a historic valley tied to a terraced olive oil production, trying to understand how to best capitalize on the value that we all know traditional forms of cultivation represent. From analyzing the incentive systems that are embedded in the conventional food distribution networks and how they conspire against authentic and artisanal production, to figuring out alternative ways in which they could be conceived to translate value to producers, encouraging a proliferation of small realities. And learning what are the kinds of skills that are missing in many of these places to give struggling small businesses a future. And it's here that we have come to an interesting conclusion about the intersection of traditional and contemporary forms of knowledge, about the necessity of local knowledge paired with an international perspective. And this has convinced us that there are opportunities in these places and that there is ample room for the knowledge of a younger generation, that they can offer value if we help structure base incentive systems correctly. But we don't lose sight of the spatial, material, and environmental challenges that come with any of these studies. Also in Valle Corsa, we've been looking at the logistical and economic challenges that come with the revival of these traditional forms of agriculture. For many reasons, terrace agroforestry, a ubiquitous feature of the Italian landscape, has undergone abandonment for close to a century now. And however, these systems provide a broad range of benefits, whether we talk about soil erosion, biodiversity, or water retention. They, sorry, one second. So for whether we talk about soil erosion, biodiversity, or water retention in Valle Corsa, we've been analyzing what makes a terrace formable today, whether that be related to their form, slope class, accessibility, crop type, relationship to tourism, etc. And we've begun developing a holistic prototype for sectors of the valley that we believe are viable. And this is a process that goes all the way down to building technologies. These are some of the photogrammetric registration we have performed on dry stone masonry walls. We've been learning from them, learning hands-on what it means to build in this way, and figuring out what ways we can preserve its most relevant functions, qualities, while at the same time capitalizing new technologies that can overcome some of the present challenges this tradition faces. Just restoring some of these walls is already expensive due to our contemporary labor costs, and the tradition is disappearing because there is no longer a market for it. Avoiding a dogmatic approach of either preserving authentically or abandoning unnostalgically, we're looking for a middle way, one whereby we can transform traditions, imbuing them with new meaning and purpose. So to wrap this up, what are some of the things on our horizon? From the research perspective, we have signed an agreement with local universities and a telecom company to make sense of what has been going on with the digital infrastructure in towns and small cities over the last 2 years of remote work experiment. In the realm of consultancy, we're discussing what a territorial innovation model might look like in Abruzzo with a consortium of mayors and other local entities. And in the realm of projects, we're working with a local nonprofit in Palazzo La Crede to organize a design charrette for a diffuse co-living facility that could catalyze the revival of this invested historic urban corridor. I end by sharing with you our current membership, the people invested in these early initiatives, and openly exploring how this new model can tackle the challenges that lie ahead for struggling Italian territories. This is only the beginning for us. We don't have all the answers. We have a lot of questions and have a lot of work ahead of us, but are excited to build this network and its corresponding resources into something that can have a lasting impact where we work. Thank you so much. I hope to see some of you in person.
Thank you, Ginevra, for this great presentation.